The first thing I'd say is be wary of the various criticisms. Some of them may well be cogent, but often, frankly, they are yet another reason to delay from a range of people whose track record on this issue has been delay and obstruction. But I think that the facts really speak for themselves. There are some nations ahead of us, there are some behind us, and there are some catching up. We know the European Union has had an emissions trading scheme in place for some time. New Zealand has passed legislation to put in place a cap and trade system. The Obama administration has now legislation through its lower house, so not yet in the Senate, which is an extraordinary feat, I think, given when they were elected. I think that really, I think if we start from the position that says, look, we assume at some point the world will move to a global carbon constraint. And I meet few people who think, there are some, but I meet few people who think that will never happen. Most people think it will happen. It may not happen as quickly or as smoothly or as evenly as we would like. If you have that view, then really the policy question is, well, how do you prepare for that? And how do you best prepare for that? And how do you manage the transition? We take the view as the government that the longer we delay the sorts of economic transformation that is required for us to compete in that world, then the more costly it will be. So there is a very strong economic argument for putting in place the framework that will drive that economic transformation. Well, first, I think the mathematics speaks for itself. I think Professor Garneau's review pointed out that even if all Annex 1, that is the Kyoto Party developed nations, reduce their emissions to zero by mid-century, the globe would still go beyond around about 650 parts per million by 2050. To put that in perspective, 450 parts per million is considered to give you a 50% chance of holding temperature rise to 2 degrees. If I can just make an aside here, this is one of the aspects of the debate we need to, I think, continue to remind ourselves of, that this generation no longer has the opportunity to prevent climate change. We've already lost that. We have already failed to act such that we can no longer prevent climate change occurring. All we can do is to reduce its impact and to reduce the scale of it, and that's a very significant risk mitigation that I think we need to do. China and India are critical to any outcome that is going to be effective in tackling climate change. I have never pretended this is an easy negotiation. Robert Hill could probably give you a bit of history as well from the time when he had this job. I would say about China that it's probably correct to say that China is prepared at the moment to do more at home than it is prepared to commit to doing in an international agreement. So we shouldn't pretend that, although some wish to, that China hasn't actually done anything. China has a range of actions it's doing, emissions or energy intensity targets. They've spent a very large proportion of their recent stimulus package in retooling to reduce their energy intensity. They have a very large renewable energy program. So I think it's wrong to say China itself doesn't understand that it will be impacted by climate change and is seeking to implement policies to reduce its emissions from business as usual. But we have an enormous challenge as a globe. We cannot say to people the solution to climate change is for you to stay poor. What we have to find is the finances and the technology and the political will to find a lower carbon development path, to de-link GDP growth, to de-link economic growth from emissions growth. We're a small part of the way there, but we still have some way to go. And I think that is the key, because what we have to find is the ability to get China and India to agree to grow differently, and to grow differently will require a whole range of different parts of the jigsaw. Well, it's been an enormous change, really quite extraordinary, and it reminds you why people are superpowers. Yeah, it does. No, but seriously, I mean, it's China, India and the US, particularly China and the US, are really the key to a successful international negotiation, and this administration has achieved an extraordinary amount in a short space of time. And sometimes I think we in Australia don't quite understand the extent of the achievement. Climate change was not an issue in the Obama election to the same extent that it was in the election of the Rudd government. It wasn't a high order issue in terms of the public discussion and the political discussion. So the fact that it has been such a priority early on really demonstrates the political commitment from the administration to push this, because there has been a very clear understanding of the fact that without America, there was not going to be a constructive negotiation. The second thing which I think we need to recognise is what an extraordinary achievement it is to get the Waxman-Markey bill, the cap and trade legislation, through their lower house. I mean, I've been responsible for, with a very big team, for getting Australia's carbon pollution reduction scheme through the Parliament from the election. And I can tell you we've been working pretty hard to develop this policy, to consult and to go through the process before, the various consultation processes, Green Paper, White Paper, draft legislation, Senate committee inquiry, and then into the Parliament. For them to get it through the House of Representatives in the time frame really demonstrates an extraordinary level of political will and political determination, not just from the administration but from members of Congress. So, and it's been done, I think, not that I want to speak for the US, but from what they say, it's clearly been done recognising that domestic action and international positions have to be interlinked. We can't have a position where the US has a Kyoto-style type position where there was an international agreement negotiated but not the domestic framework to implement it. So I think that's been very clear from the public statements from both Congress and the administration, the importance they see, the international significance of their domestic policy. Thank you.
No more questions.